Thank you, Elizabeth, Dana, and all the folks at CCL for inviting me to your 25th anniversary celebration. It's really fun to be here with old friends and lots of new ones. So I'm going to speak today from the perspective of an entrepreneur and describe some of the values that we must develop as entrepreneurs, as well as investors and consumers if we're going to build the new economy of our dreams. And I'll do that by telling a few stories. So my restaurant in Philadelphia began buying from local farmers in 1986. And at that time, we focused on organic fruits and vegetables, free-range chickens and eggs from uncaged hens. But it wasn't until the late 90s that I read a book about the factory farming of pigs in these horrible windowless barns where the sows are kept in crates where they can't take a step forward or backward or never have a breath of fresh air or a ray of sunshine, standing on slats where their manure goes down into lagoons that go on to pollute the water, soil, and air in the area, and artificially inseminated, and the babies taken away prematurely as though they were just pieces of furniture or machinery in a factory. And I was just appalled by this because, of course, pigs are mammals like our dogs, like us, with the capacity to have emotions. And I just felt that this was a violation of nature to treat these mothers in this way, and a breach of our fiduciary duty as the stewards of farm animals. And I realized in horror that the pork I was serving at the White Dog must come from the system, because if you don't know otherwise, that's where pork in this country comes from. So finally I just went into the kitchen and said, take all the ham, bacon, pork chops off the menu, that we cannot be a part of this brutal and cruel system. And we went about finding a source for pastured pork. Then I learned about the plight of the cow. Cows are herbivores. They're supposed to be out on grass, eating green grass and clover and whatnot. Instead, they're kept in barns, eating subsidized grain. And so we went about finding a source for all grass-fed cows and for the most part, grass-fed dairy. So I finally got to the point where I thought, looked at my menu and thought, well, you've done it now. All of your meat and poultry it comes from sources of small farms where the animals are treated with respect and kindness. This is going to be our market niche. This is our competitive advantage. No other restaurant in Philadelphia is doing this. And then I had a transformational moment. And I said to myself, well, Judy, if you really do care about those pigs, if you really do care about the rural communities that are being destroyed and the small farmers run out of business by these large corporations, if you care about the environment that's being polluted by the concentration of manure in these factory farm systems, if you care about the workers in these horrible slaughterhouses and factory farms, and if you care about the consumers that are eating meat that's full of hormones and antibiotics, then rather than keep this as your competitive advantage, you'll share this information with your competitors. And that was my big turning point, I'd say in my whole life, really, because we as business people are taught to compete, and to share with my competitors was a huge step for me. And I think it went back to many different things, but one of them was living with indigenous people. And someone mentioned earlier indigenous wisdom and how we need it so badly today, that's for sure. And I had the opportunity of living for a year in an Eskimo village in Alaska in 1969 when I was a VISTA volunteer. And there I was able to witness a civilization that has lasted for thousands of years that was based on cooperation and sharing. Where I looked at my own society and saw that our economy is based on competition and hoarding, that we actually admire the most, the ones who hoard the most, and reward those who are greedy. So anyway, for me, when I had this realization, I turned to the farmer who was bringing us in 2 pigs a week, grown in a sustainable way, and said, would you like to expand your business? And he said, yes. And I said, what's holding you back? And he said he needed $30,000 to buy a refrigerated truck so that he could deliver to the other restaurants in town. So I loaned him $30,000. And then I started a nonprofit, White Dog Community Enterprises, and started putting 20% of my profits into my nonprofit, hired our first staff person, and her job was to go around to the other restaurants in town and teach them how to buy from local farmers. And we did a wholesale guide and listed all the farms and the phone numbers and the products and whatnot that were available. I turned over a room in my house for the office of what we called Fair Food. And Fair Food now is 13 years old and does many different projects. Some of them you might already do here, including a food hub we are a partner in what's called the Common Market that picks up food from the farmers, aggregates it in a warehouse, and then is able to answer orders from large institutions such as schools, hospitals, senior centers, and so on. And that came about for us from a project that we had called Farm to Institution, where we were trying to identify larger scale, medium-sized farmers to cater to the larger buyers. But it was really hard for a large buyer to pick up the phone and deal with like 10 or 12 different farmers. And so that's why we started the Common Market. We publish a consumer guide to a local food. We realized that while we were increasing the demand for local food, we had to help increase the supply. So we started a farm assistance program to help farmers understand how to market to the urban marketplace, and started having farm chef events and tours to the farm, and started a farm stand in our central market, the Reading Terminal. We started as a little like a card table in the middle of the market. We went to the butchers there and asked if they would carry local pastured animal products, and they said no, the consumers wouldn't want it, it's too expensive. So we started off with a little card table selling frozen, locally raised meat, and that now is a huge farm stand with around $1 million in sales and 12 employees. That is the only farm stand, what's really a grocery store, that's open year-round, 7 days a week, with local products, not only fresh, but also locally processed products. And Fair Food recently just put on the second annual Farm and Food Fest, open to the public. This is our second year. The first year was 3,000 people came. The second, almost 4,000, that showed all the products in our region made from local foods, everything from canned and jarred foods and pastas and whatnot to soap and facial cream and whatnot. Gin, vodka. We can make locally made martinis now in Philadelphia. We've got our own gin and vodka. I gained a global perspective around the need for a new economy through our international sister restaurant project, where we had sister relationships with restaurants in different countries and learned so much. I could talk my whole time just talking about our experience in Cuba, where I went 5 times to understand how they were able to achieve food sovereignty in Cuba and feed all their own people from the island, partly by turning swords into plowshares, training soldiers to be farmers. A very great model there. But what I really wanted to focus on today was my experience with the Zapatistas in Chiapas. And I went to Chiapas for 10 years to understand about their revolution and what that was all about. And they had the revolution on the day that NAFTA went into effect, on January 1st, 1994, because it turns out that in order to comply with NAFTA, they had to release indigenous lands that were communally owned to foreign exploitation. And the Zapatistas saw the handwriting on the wall that without the protection of trade barriers, that the U.S. was going to dump subsidized corn into Mexico and put out of business their people, which is exactly what happened, which is one of the main reasons why we've had such an increase in immigration from Mexico, is because of our policies. But while I was down there, I came to understand that what the Zapatistas were really fighting for, and this was a nonviolent revolution, was the right for self-reliance, the right to grow their own food as they had grown for thousands of years, to be able to teach their children in their own language and with their own values, rather than being sucked into a global monoculture, to be able to have their women make their own clothes instead of being forced to work in factories on maquiladoras to produce cheap clothes for export to the United States and other places. So I saw that at first I thought I was going down there to have to help the Zapatistas, and we started a coffee business with them and so on. But suddenly I connected the dots between what was happening to their farmers and what is happening to our farmers. Our farmers were being driven off their farms by our policies as well. And I saw that the cry of the Zapatista for local self-reliance and maintaining local culture was the cry of communities all over the world. That communities everywhere were becoming reliant on large corporations to meet our basic needs. That we need long-distance shipping routes to bring us our food, to bring us our clothes, to bring us our energy, and that we were dependent on these large corporations. And so that's what gave me the idea for a new global economy, one that rather than is controlled by these large pockets of wealth and power of large corporations, a global economy that's a very intricate network of small to small win-win relationships that connect self-reliant local economies that are self-reliant in basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, and energy. And that's when I started BALLE, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, in 2001. And we're now a network of over 30,000 local independent businesses in 80 different communities, including Charleston. Lowcountry Local First is 6 years old now, and that's why we came here for our conference 3 years ago. And Jamie Haley is the executive director, and she's right over there. Would you stand up for a second, Jamie, so everybody sees who you are? She's done such a great job here in Charleston. And we'll mention the Farmer Incubator here. That's one that's started by Jamie in Local First, Lowcountry, and is on Johns Island, where they're training local farmers for a 3-year period and then finding them land to continue farming. And that's something we need so badly right now. I'll give you a couple of other examples of things that are happening in other communities. Tom Stearns up in Hardwick, Vermont, has organized with 25 other businesses. They began just by meeting and sharing problems and making bridge loans to each other, sharing equipment, sharing storage places, and so on. And then they began to see how they could connect their waste streams with their supply chains. And for instance, Tom is has a seed company, High Mowing Seeds, is that, I think, the name of it? Anyway, he grows vegetables and takes the seeds from those, and that's his product that he sells, but he just threw the vegetables onto the compost. But then he realized that his friend was selling soups, and so he took the vegetables to make for the soup. And then a compost company that was next door to Tom's business took the heat generated by the compost and was used to heat Tom's greenhouses, and then Tom, in exchange, did trials for the different types of compost in his greenhouse for the other company. So these are things that you can do when you're in close proximity. They're working now on a plant to take the waste from cheese making the whey and turn that into a floor finishing product for Vermont hardwood floors. Another example is closer to you, Burlington, North Carolina, where Eric Henry started a Cotton of the Carolinas project, where he makes T-shirts. So he prints T-shirts with different logos and distributes them widely. And he realized that the cotton T-shirts he was buying were made in Europe or China or elsewhere, and that it turned out, he looked into this and saw that 80% of the cotton that's grown in the Carolinas is exported, and he couldn't even find local cotton for his own shirts. So he started a dirt to shirt program where he actually connected the farmers and the ginners and the spinners and the weavers and the cutters and so on into a supply chain and produced these shirts that they label Cotton of the Carolinas. And he claims that his T-shirts are the most sustainable in the whole world. They're working now on organic dyes and organic cotton, switching to all organic cotton. So within 750 miles, they produce these T-shirts, where normally it's a 17,000-mile supply chain. So it's quite an example. And I wanted to let you know that Eric Henry will be speaking here. Lowcountry Local First is having the Good Business Summit on June 20th here in Charleston, and Eric is going to be speaking. The BALLE conference is June 12th to 14th in Buffalo. Okay, let's see, I've got a little bit more time here. I want to talk about two other things. Will mentioned the importance of re-examining growth, and that's something I totally believe in too. And I was often asked, how many white dogs are there? Well, just one, because in our business world and as far as our personal lives as well, our success is measured by how much we have, by continual growth. But I realized, just as Will said and others, that we can't have continual growth on a finite planet. So I found ways to reinvent growth. And one way is to, rather than start a cookie cutter, like another white dog in another city or whatever, look to see what your community needs, how you can plug those leaky buckets that Will mentioned. What is your community importing that you could make locally? Or what kind of retail business is needed in your community that you don't have? So instead of starting another white dog, I started a black hat, which was our retail store next door that's sold locally made and fair trade gifts. But there's many other examples of this, and one of the best examples in the BALLE community is a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Zingerman's Deli, owned by Paul Zagno. And instead of starting a chain of delis, this very successful deli, they looked to see what their community needed. Their community needed a bakery, so they started one. Their community needed a fair trade coffee roasting company, so they started one. Their community needed a creamery to make their own ice cream and cheese and so on, so they started one. They started a candy store. They started a candy manufacturing company. They started about 12 different businesses. They're kind of the family of businesses. And not only that, but they promoted or gave business partnership opportunities to their own employees, so they created more owners. And that's another important principle of this local economy movement, is that we're creating more owners. There's more opportunity. We're decentralizing ownership. And when you decentralize ownership, you decentralize wealth and power, economic power and political power. So we're strengthening our democracy by creating more owners and creating self-reliant local economies. And Paul Saginaw from Zingerman's is going to be in Charleston on June 20th also at Lowcountry Local First event. So if you want to hear more from Paul and Eric about their incredible models, you can go to that conference. But I just wanted to emphasize this idea of when an entrepreneur wants to grow, instead of doing a chain, look to see what your community needs. And where you can look is at the building blocks of a local living economy, renewable energy, green building, sustainable textiles, local independent retailers, independent media, local arts and culture. These are all the building blocks of a local sustainable community, and that's where entrepreneurs need to look. Which of those building blocks, what are the products that are missing, like from our local community? And the other thing I realized that in terms of reinventing growth, that we don't have to grow materially. We can grow by increasing our knowledge, by expanding our consciousness, by deepening our relationships, by developing our creativity, by having more fun. And so those are the kinds of things I did at the White Dog. I don't have time to go into them all now, but we started educational programs, and education became a product of the White Dog, as well as food and service, where we had talks on climate change or talks on local food or foreign policy or whatever. And we took people on tours, locally affordable housing tours, eco tours, tours to foreign countries, and so on. All ways that we can grow in non-material ways. And I think that's what we have to look at. And what kind of businesses can be started that don't use up much natural resources, businesses that share, that are about sharing ideas, that are about sharing tools. The zip car, the car sharing idea is one of those models. So I just wanted to end with something that a farmer once told me, and that is that successful farming is the balance of the feminine and the masculine. It's a balance of nurturing and efficiency. And if you have too much efficiency, you might run a really good business and be on time for everything, but you might not have as good a product. If you have too much nurturing, you might have beautiful tomatoes, but they're going to rot on the vine because you haven't had enough efficiency to structure your business right. So I think that's really something that we need to look at our whole economy. I feel that our economy is weighted on masculine energy. And when I say masculine and feminine energy, I'm talking about those qualities that are in each of us, men and women both. I'm not talking about gender here. But because women, in order to make it in their economy, often rely on their masculine qualities more than their feminine. So we're just as guilty as the men are. But the problem that we have now is that we have an economy that's weighted towards efficiency. The CAFOs, the concentrated animal feeding operations for those pigs, were totally about efficiency. Like, how little space can we give those pigs and those chickens? What a small amount of food can we feed them? What a small amount of air can they breathe? No nurturing whatsoever. Only about efficiency. And we can look at that, whether it's the way that the chocolate bars are made, the slave labor and cocoa bean picking or whatever. We need to bring forth the feminine in all of us. We need to make decisions as much from the heart as from the head. And we need to open our hearts. We need to open our hearts and to truly feel the cruelty that underlies the current economy and work to build a new one that's compassionate and based on sharing and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy.